In just 31 seconds, one of Hollywood's most respected actors completely shut down Michael Strahan on live television, exposing him in front of millions of viewers before storming off the Good Morning America set. What started as a simple conversation about movies turned into an explosive argument that had the entire studio in absolute shock, with Strahan losing control and Jackson delivering one of the most intense takedowns ever witnessed on morning television. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that reveal who these people really are behind the cameras. The Good Morning America studio was buzzing with its usual morning energy. Samuel L. Epps. Jackson walked onto the set looking sharp in a dark blue suit, his signature calm confidence radiating as he settled into the interview chair across from Michael Strahan. The audience applauded, excited to hear from one of the biggest names in cinema. Jackson was there to promote his latest film, and everyone expected the typical light-hearted morning show banter that usually fills these segments. Strahan flashed his famous gap-toothed smile at the cameras, shuffling his note cards as the applause died down. Samuel L. Jackson, welcome back to Good Morning America. Always great to have you here, man, Strahan said, reaching over for a handshake. Jackson returned the handshake with a nod. Good to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me. So, let's jump right into it, Strahan began, leaning back in his chair with a relaxed posture. You've got this new movie coming out, and I've got to say, I watched the trailer last night. Looks intense. But I'm curious, after all these years in the business, after playing so many different characters, do you ever feel like you're just playing the same guy over and over again? The question hung in the air for a moment. Jackson's eyebrows raised slightly, and you could see his expression shift from friendly to guarded in an instant. Excuse me? He said, his voice still controlled but with an edge that hadn't been there seconds before. Strahan seemed completely oblivious to the temperature change in the room. He actually chuckled, like he'd just asked something totally innocent. You know what I mean, man. Like, you've got that Samuel L. Jackson thing you do. The tough guy. The cool character who always has something clever to say. It's great, don't get me wrong. But do you ever want to, I don't know, try something different? Step outside that box a little bit? Jackson sat forward in his seat, his hands clasped together. His jaw tightened, and anyone watching closely could see he was choosing his words very carefully. Michael, let me ask you something. Have you actually watched any of my films? I'm not talking about seeing clips on social media or catching 5 minutes while you're flipping through channels. I mean, really sat down and watched them. Strahan looked confused by the question, his smile faltering just a bit. Of course, man. I've seen your movies. Everybody has. You're Samuel L. Jackson. That's not what I asked you, Jackson said firmly. I asked if you've watched them. Because if you had, you'd know that comparing my character in Jackie Brown to my character in Django Unchained to my character in The Banker to my character in Pulp Fiction is like comparing apples to car engines. They're not even in the same universe. The audience had gone completely quiet. The camera operators glanced at each other nervously. Strahan tried to laugh it off, waving his hand dismissively. Hey, I'm not trying to criticize you, Sam. I'm just saying, don't call me Sam, Jackson interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. We're not friends like that, it's Samuel. Strahan blinked, clearly taken aback. Okay, Samuel, I apologize. But come on, man, you're being a little sensitive here. It's just a question. I'm trying to have a conversation. A conversation based on what? Jackson shot back. Based on you not doing your homework? Based on you reading some lazy question off a card that your producers wrote without bothering to know what the hell you're talking about? That's not a conversation, Michael. That's you wasting my time and disrespecting my craft on national television. Strahan's face flushed. You could see the defensiveness creeping into his body language as he sat up straighter, his jaw clenching. Hold on now, hold on. I don't appreciate you coming at me like this. I asked you a simple question about your acting, and you're acting like I insulted your mother. You did worse than that, Jackson said, his voice rising slightly but still controlled, which somehow made it even more intense. You reduced 40 years of work, 40 years of me studying different characters, learning different accents, embodying different people's pain and joy and struggles, down to some one-dimensional stereotype. You basically said, I show up, say some cool lines, and collect a check. That's what you just told millions of people about my career. The tension in the studio was suffocating now. Production assistants stood frozen behind the cameras. The other Good Morning America hosts, who were sitting at the news desk across the studio, looked stunned. Strahan tried to regain control of the situation, but you could see the anger building in him too. You know what, Samuel? I think you're overreacting here, Strahan said, his voice getting louder. I've been doing this job for years. I know how to interview people, and I've never had somebody come on this show and disrespect me the way you're doing right now. Jackson let out a short, bitter laugh. Disrespect you, Michael? Do you hear yourself? You disrespected me first, but because I called you out on it, suddenly I'm the problem? That's rich. That's really rich. I didn't disrespect you, Strahan insisted, his voice echoing through the studio now. I asked you a legitimate question about your acting career. No, you didn't, Jackson fired back, matching his volume. You asked me a lazy, ignorant question that showed you didn't prepare for this interview. You asked me a question that revealed you see me as just another black actor who plays tough guys in movies, not as someone who's actually built a diverse, critically acclaimed body of work. And when I checked you on it, instead of saying, you know what, you're right, let me rephrase that, you doubled down and tried to make me look like the bad guy. Strahan pointed his finger across the table, his face now clearly showing anger. Don't you dare try to make this about race. Don't you dare sit there and pull that card. The air in the studio turned ice cold. Jackson stared at Strahan with an expression that could cut through steel. Pull that card? He repeated slowly. Pull that card? Michael, what card do you think I'm pulling? The card that says I'm tired of interviewers making assumptions about my work without actually knowing my work. The card that says I'm tired of being put in a box by people who should know better? You're sitting there, a black man who's had to fight for respect in your own career. And you're telling me I'm pulling a card when I point out the obvious bias in your question? Strahan shook his head aggressively. No. You're twisting my words now. You're trying to make me look like the villain here when all I did was ask you about your acting style. That's it. That's all I did. Your acting style, Jackson repeated mockingly. Michael, that's code. That's the polite way of saying you think all my characters are the same. And they're not. If you'd done even 5 minutes of research, you'd know that. You'd know about the work I put into Coach Carter, where I played a man trying to save kids from the streets. You'd know about my role in The Sunset Limited, where I'm playing a character having a deep philosophical conversation about life and death. You'd know about A Time to Kill, where I'm playing a father driven to desperate measures. But you don't know about any of that, do you? Because you didn't prepare. The camera crew was capturing every second of this meltdown. You could see one cameraman wiping sweat from his forehead. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Strahan's hands were trembling slightly as he gripped the arms of his chair. I did prepare, Strahan said through gritted teeth. I read the notes. I watched the trailer. I know what I'm doing. Reading notes isn't preparation, Jackson countered. Watching a 2-minute trailer isn't preparation. Preparation is understanding who you're talking to and what they've accomplished. Preparation is crafting questions that show you actually give a damn about the conversation you're about to have. What you did was show up and wing it, and now you're mad because I'm not playing along. Strahan stood up from his chair, and the studio gasped. You need to watch how you're talking to me right now. This is my show. My show. You're a guest here, and you don't get to come in here and talk to me like I'm some kind of idiot. Jackson stood up too, never breaking eye contact. Then stop acting like one. This might be your show, but that doesn't give you the right to be unprepared and disrespectful. I've been in this business longer than you've been out of the NFL, and I've dealt with better interviewers having worse days than whatever this disaster is. Oh, so now I'm a disaster? Strahan yelled, his composure completely gone. You know what? Maybe you should leave. Maybe you should just get the hell off my set if you're going to sit here and insult me on my own show. Maybe I should, Jackson said, his voice suddenly calm again, which was somehow more devastating than if he'd yelled back. Because clearly, you're more interested in protecting your ego than actually having a real conversation. You asked me a stupid question. I called you out on it. And instead of being professional about it, you're up here screaming at me like we're in a parking lot somewhere." Strahan was breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides. The producers were frantically talking into their headsets, probably trying to figure out if they should cut to commercial. "You know what your problem is, Samuel? You think you're better than everybody. You think because you've been in some Quentin Tarantino movies and said some memorable lines that you're above being asked normal questions." Jackson shook his head slowly, a look of genuine disappointment crossing his face. "My problem? No, Michael. My problem walked into this studio thinking he could wing an interview with me. My problem is standing right in front of me, throwing a tantrum because he got checked for being lazy. I've done hundreds of interviews, man. Hundreds. And most of those interviewers, even the ones on small local stations, even the ones doing podcasts out of their garages, they do more research than you did today. They ask me real questions about my characters, about my process, about specific scenes or choices I made. You ask me if I'm basically a one-trick pony, and when I explained why that's insulting, you acted like I attacked you. Because you did attack me." Strahan shot back, his voice cracking with emotion now. "From the moment I asked that question, you've been attacking me. You've been condescending and rude and acting like you're so much smarter than everyone else in this room." "I haven't attacked you," Jackson said firmly. "I've challenged you. There's a difference. And if you can't tell the difference between someone attacking you and someone holding you accountable for asking a lazy question, then maybe you're not cut out for this job." Those words hit Strahan like a physical blow. His face contorted with rage. "Not cut out for this job? Are you kidding me right now? I've been hosting this show successfully for years. Millions of people watch this show every single morning. I've interviewed presidents, celebrities, athletes, everyone. And you're going to stand there and tell me I'm not cut out for this?" "Yeah, I am," Jackson said without hesitation. "Because a good interviewer doesn't get defensive when they're called out. A good interviewer doesn't yell at their guests. A good interviewer takes the feedback, adjusts, and moves forward. But you can't do that, can you? You can't admit that maybe, just maybe, you messed up. You can't admit that your question was offensive and lazy. Instead, you're doubling down, getting louder, and trying to intimidate me into backing off. Well, newsflash, Michael. I don't back off. I don't back down. Not for you, not for anybody." The other hosts were now slowly approaching the interview area, clearly concerned that this situation was spiraling completely out of control. Robin Roberts had her hand up, like she was trying to signal for everyone to calm down, but neither Strahan nor Jackson paid her any attention. "Get out," Strahan said, his voice shaking with rage. "I'm serious. Get out of this studio right now. We're done here." "I'm already leaving," Jackson replied, yanking off the small microphone that was clipped to his lapel. He tossed it onto the chair behind him. "I don't need to be here for this. I've got better things to do than watch a grown man have a breakdown on live television because he can't handle being called out." "Yeah, run away," Strahan taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. "That's what you do, right? When somebody pushes back on you, you run away and play victim." Jackson stopped walking and turned back around slowly. The look on his face made everyone in the studio hold their breath. "Push back on me? Michael, you haven't pushed back on anything. You've just thrown a fit. There's a difference. And let me tell you something before I walk out that door. When people watch this back, when they see this clip all over the internet in about 20 minutes, they're not going to see me as the problem. They're going to see exactly what happened here. They're going to see that you asked me a disrespectful question, and when I didn't just smile and nod and play along like a good little guest, you lost it. You completely lost it." "I didn't lose anything," Strahan shouted, his voice now hoarse from all the yelling. "Yes, you did," Jackson said quietly, but his words carried across the entire studio. "You lost your cool. You lost your professionalism. And you're about to lose whatever respect people had for you as an interviewer. Because this right here," he gestured at the space between them, "this is going to follow you. People are going to remember this. They're going to remember the day Michael Strahan couldn't handle being challenged, so he kicked Samuel L. Jackson off his show. That's your legacy now." One of the producers, a woman in her 30s with a headset and a panicked expression, finally rushed onto the set. "Gentlemen, please, can we just take a breath here? Can we maybe reset and— There's nothing to reset, Jackson said, cutting her off but keeping his tone respectful toward her. I appreciate you trying, but this interview is done. I'm not sitting back down to continue this circus. Strahan let out a harsh laugh. Fine by me. We don't need you anyway. We've got plenty of other guests who actually appreciate being on this show. Then have them on, Jackson replied. Have on people who let you ask whatever you want without question. Have on people who laugh at your jokes and let you skate by on charm instead of substance. But don't ever ask me back here. Because I'm done with this. I'm done with you. The entire crew was watching this unfold like a car crash, unable to look away. Some of the younger production assistants looked like they might cry. This was unprecedented. Nothing like this had ever happened on Good Morning America before. Strahan took a step closer to Jackson, and for a second, it looked like things might actually get physical. Security personnel near the edges of the set tensed up, ready to intervene if necessary. You're done with me? That's hilarious. You're the one who came on my show and started this whole thing. You're the one who couldn't just answer a simple question without getting on your high horse and making everything about yourself. Everything about myself? Jackson's voice rose again. Michael, I was trying to talk about my work. My actual work. The films I've made, the characters I've played, the decades I've spent perfecting my craft. You're the one who made it personal by asking me a question that dismissed all of that. And when I tried to educate you, when I tried to explain why that question was problematic, you took it as a personal attack instead of a learning opportunity. I don't need you to educate me, Strahan roared. I don't need lessons from you about anything. Clearly you do, Jackson shouted back. Because you still don't get it. You still don't understand why what you said was wrong. You're standing here yelling at me, making yourself look worse with every word that comes out of your mouth, and you still don't see it. Strahan's chest was heaving now. Sweat was visible on his forehead. His carefully styled appearance from the beginning of the show had completely deteriorated. You know what? Screw this. Screw you. Get out of my studio. Security. 2 security guards started moving toward the set, but Jackson held up his hand. Don't worry. I'm leaving on my own. I don't need an escort. He looked back at Strahan one final time. You know what the saddest part about all this is, Michael? You had an opportunity here. You had a chance to have a real conversation with me about my work, about the industry, about the challenges we face as black actors in Hollywood. You could have used your platform to dig deeper, to show people something meaningful. Instead, you wasted it on a trash question you probably didn't even write, and then you made it worse by acting like a child when you got checked. That's on you, man. That's all on you. Strahan opened his mouth to respond, but Jackson had already turned away. He walked toward the exit with his head held high, his posture straight and dignified, despite everything that had just happened. The cameras followed him the entire way, capturing every step as he left the Good Morning America set for what would clearly be the last time. Behind him, Strahan stood in the middle of the studio, surrounded by stunned crew members and concerned co-hosts, his face red with anger and embarrassment. The producer finally signaled to cut to commercial, and as the lights dimmed, Samuel L. Jackson disappeared through the backstage door, leaving behind one of the most explosive confrontations in morning television history.